All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Anna and Liz, and we are here to chat with you about the most common mistakes we see our clients make when it comes to insurance. And this is our Live with Main Street show. Hi, Liz. How are you doing?
Hi, Anna. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here too, on the other side of the country, coast to coast. Well, so we get to see a lot of clients who come through our doors. Pretty much everyone that we work with gives us a chance to help them, figure out whether they have enough insurance coverage in all the different kind of areas. So I think it's awesome if we can kind of share with everyone what do we see like the most common mistakes, because everybody I think knows they need to get insurance coverage, right? Like, you need to get a car insurance or you need to get a homeowner's insurance, so you can't actually have those things. But I think a lot of people out there don't really necessarily understand why, and a lot of times we see that the coverage is not, it's not enough coverage, or it's incorrect coverage, or like there's all these kinds of things. So let's kind of chat and share what we found to be the most typical amongst our clients, and maybe perhaps they can take away a few nuggets and hopefully make changes. Does that sound good?
That works for me.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'm happy to kick us off.
Go ahead.
The first thing that I've seen a lot is the idea there's kind of a misconception about liability insurance. And so, whether you refer to it as umbrella insurance or PLUP, personal liability umbrella insurance, it all represents the same thing. A lot of our clients think that they have to accumulate a very sizable amount of wealth and a high net worth in order to benefit from this coverage. So I just wanted to set the record straight a little bit, get the wheels turning so that you can determine whether you think it may be the right fit for you. What most people do understand is this liability insurance. This is protecting you and other members of your household if you ever find yourself liable for what they call kind of a covered peril, a covered mistake here. And the important thing to think of is this would kind of go above and beyond what's already included in your homeowner's insurance and your auto's insurance, and it would cover this overarching umbrella and say, okay, if your current liability limits would only cover this much protection, we go above and beyond. And now if you get yourself into a major catastrophic car accident, so if you slip on ice, right, and you cause damage to the car in front of you and it creates a 10-car pileup, well, it's likely that your existing auto liability insurance isn't prepared to cover all of that. Legal bills, medical expenses, and that's when something like this PLUP insurance kicks in. So now most people know that. They think of that and they think, well, that's a pretty severe circumstance, and I'm willing to take that risk. So I like to toss out a few more practical examples. One of them, a lot of us are pet owners and lovers. So it could be something as simple as your dog getting outside and finding themselves biting a neighbor or a mailman. And then that person goes to sue you for, lost wages and negligence and pain and suffering. And so that's something that has nothing to do kind of with what you would traditionally think of your homeowners and your autos insurance. Another one is a negative review, Anna, on social media in these days.
Oh yeah.
You have to be pretty politically correct. And so let's say you have a strong opinion or you put a negative review on a certain company. This insurance actually covers libel and slander. And that seems like would be, depending on your personality, this decision should be made based on your personality, pardon me, more than being based off of what your current net worth is.
For sure. And I think a lot of folks also don't think that when it comes to situations like that and how damages actually get assessed, whether it's physical damages or financial damages, those numbers add up so fast, right? And one of them is like legal expenses that we don't even think about, right? What if you really have to defend yourself? Maybe it wasn't your fault, and now the other party, needs to take the responsibility. So how do you come up for those costs? Really, a lot of times out of pocket. And I think also, Liz, like you can attest to this. It's so dirt cheap, right? To think about, like, because umbrellas or this additional liability protection we're talking about is sold in $1 million increments.
Yep.
And it just depending on the area, it's like 150 to $200 a year for $1 million coverage, which is
It's
nearly
true.
not enough to go on a great date once a month, right?
Exactly. And the other thing I've seen, Anna, is there's a lot of policies that cover you abroad, which is helpful
Hmm.
for our clients that travel a lot. And I'll have to tell you, there's a third example I give. If there's a teenager in your house and they throw a party against your
Oh
will,
yeah.
right? And then one of their friends is drinking at your house and they get stopped by a cop on the way home and their parents are devastated and they go to sue you. So there are a lot of practical ways. I think people get hung up on the idea of no one that I invite to my home is the type of person who's going to turn around and sue me, right? I mean, that's the immediate first thought, as opposed to kind of thinking
Yeah.
not so rare occasions that that could be happening. So yeah, we just wanted to bring it to the forefront of your mind and have you think it through a bit more and say, okay, I need to approach this with a new lens and I need to really understand all the aspects of what this insurance provides.
Yes, and the other thing too, don't think that you have to. Um, I think within that area of insurance coverage, I mean, there's a ton of mistakes. We can talk like probably for months about, each of the little things we usually find when we review our clients' policies. But don't think that you have to go out and find a specific company that sells umbrellas policies. No, you don't. You actually just ask the insurance provider that you already have. Most of the times, I shouldn't say all the time, but most of the times they would offer you an insurance, an additional policy. A lot of times the bundles are even, more attractive because there's a little bit of a discount. So look what you already have. You don't have to go search for a new company, try to figure out which one is better, which one is the best. It's actually probably even more steps to do that because you have to like make sure that they know that you have homeowners, with farmers, and then the car insurance with Geico, and then Progressive gave you the umbrella. So we've seen that too. It's all over. Yeah. So the other bigger mistake, or just as big of a mistake that we see with clients who don't necessarily own homes, right? But they might be renters, is that the idea or the notion that renters insurance isn't something that I need to get, right? Or it may not be required in their lease contract, and it's like, I don't really have anything to insure. I don't really, there's not a need. So what are the most common reasons that we advocate for that for our clients?
Yeah, great question. I think it comes down to understanding what the coverage includes. There's really three main categories, and the first one is personal property. So this is right away addressing the person who says, I don't own that much, I don't see why this provides value. So what you do is you get a certain amount of coverage where they will repair or replace your belongings if they're lost or if they're stolen. So know that this includes your computer and your cell phone and your clothes and your kitchen supplies. And so even though most of us kind of underestimate how much we own, it can be a good amount of stuff. So if there's theft or fire or water damage, you would have a certain limit, but these things would be covered. So fair enough if you're thinking, I'm just starting off, it doesn't make sense for me to have this coverage. But I'll tell you, it actually makes sense for a lot of people as young as college students to have the coverage. And the reason is to go into number 2 and number 3, right? Outside of personal property, it has that same liability coverage. So if you leave the water running in the bathtub and it destroys, your little apartment and the room below, that's the kind of thing that would be covered. If you have someone come into your house and they trip over your area rug, that's the kind of thing that would be covered. So there's a lot more to it than just kind of seeing it as that individual property. And then the third piece, which is arguably one of the most important, is your living expenses. If there is a point that one of those situations happens, or maybe it's a fire and your place is inhabitable, and you can't stay there, then this starts to cover your living expenses for that period of time, because you'd be coming out of pocket, right, for a matter of weeks and potentially months if any of these major issues happened. So that's why we say, we want you to think and really understand what that coverage includes, rather than just putting up a blanket sign and saying, okay, I don't have enough stuff, that doesn't apply to me. Because again, it's very, very affordable. It's ideal for bundling. Just like your other insurance, it's going to have a deductible and a limit. And, you should really think about this, particularly on the personal property, understand the difference between actual cash value and replacement value in terms of replacing these items. Yeah, but don't overlook this one and think, well, I'm a renter. I don't own that much.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like you said already, it really goes well with if you see that there's additional need for more liability protection, because just like homeowners policy or the auto policy, renters will have like a certain amount. You can get like 100,000. It just depends. 250, maybe 500. I'm not sure if I've seen. Actually, I have seen policies that have like $1 million worth of liability. If you need that much, which is totally fine, right? So do think about bundling those. An interesting thing I found looking around and preparing for this topic yesterday, and it's just funny that we're doing this in June. June 28th is the actual National Insurance Awareness Day. So what it's supposed to help everybody is just to kind of remind that just because you have coverage, certain coverages, right? You've bought them before. It is something that you need to come back and periodically revisit because things change. And then also just a reminder that maybe perhaps you were delaying getting some of these things that we're talking about today. That's kind of the time. You don't have to do it on June 28th. I mean, do it any time of the year. But if there's a national day for it, hey, it's just another reminder. So I just thought it was a cool little thing to think about. I'm like, is there a national day? You know how they have national awareness months for certain things. So that was cool to find out. So what a coincidence.
Yeah, seriously, we planned that well.
I know, right? Except that today is June 7th, so we still have some time. So how about this? How about you give yourself a deadline by June 28th to take a look at all of your insurance policies, right? Just give it another look and see maybe there's some things that need to be addressed. Now, there might be a point where you just don't really know what you don't know, so reach out to us. That's why you have advisors on your team, and you can ask questions, right? So if you don't know, ask a question. That's, I think, the best position. So we have one more thing to kind of talk about as far as our mistakes, right, Liz?
Yeah, we wanted to just talk a little bit about the difference between having an independent agent or broker versus getting your insurance through someone that works directly for Progressive or Allstate or Geico. The terminology for that is a captive agent. So we wanted to kind of remind you, in this day and age, there's a lot of online search agents that you can use to start to compare. And when your goal is always to try to figure out apples to apples, because a lot of these companies kind of use their own, maybe not necessarily proprietary language, but they're calling the same thing. They might be using two different pieces of terminology there. So it can get a little bit challenging. And that's why we like when our clients consider working through maybe, an independent agent or a broker. And the reason for that is so they're not tied, as I said, to one individual company. So it's their job to find out real details about your situation. I mean, the old school insurance way, where you sat down with someone and talked to them about your needs instead of just typing away on the computer, right? But the whole purpose of them is to kind of be able to do some comparison shopping, to be able to bundle, maybe using a combination of a few different products and a few different companies, and really give you the best bang for your buck. And for most of us, from an insurance standpoint, obviously, once we get that apples to apples, our number one goal is to reduce the cost of our premiums, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so they provide a lot of value, these agents do. Of course, with every pro comes a con. So we just wanted to point out that most of them are commission-based. So as with anyone who works off of commission, and I believe both Anna and my husband might potentially work off commission, so we're not throwing anyone under the bus, but recognize that there could be a conflict of interest. So, they could be enticed to sell you a policy with unnecessary bells and whistles. Now, obviously, if you get in with the right person, that wouldn't be the case, but it's important that, you're an educated consumer and you realize that could kind of be a downside of working with them. And then on the other side, like I said, there's those captive agents. Now, the good news with them is they tend to have a very thorough product knowledge, right? Because they only sell a limited number of products, and so they're really going to have a lot of details on those. And of course, the con is pretty obvious. They can't really do shop outside of their own brand. So just wanted to give you an idea of some things to think about. Maybe look at referrals, same sort of thing we do for all of the purchases in our lives. Ask your friends, ask your network, look for referrals, check out the Better Business Bureau, because there's constantly new insurance companies out there. So you want to make sure you're with a good one.
Yeah. Well, sounds good. Give us a shout out if you need any help in assessing what changes you might need to make. Now, we kind of focused really heavily, I think, here on property and casualty, right? That's the side of homeowners, auto, additional liability. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't think about life insurance, disability, long-term care, health insurance, perhaps as well, if there's changes that are currently happening in your life, or you might be anticipating them ahead. So let's get working on that insurance coverage to make sure that we outsource. I call that outsource the risk that you can't financially stomach yourself, because that's the whole idea, right? Partnership with insurance companies always works. So, all right. Well, I think that's all we have for the time being. We will see you next month, and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.